Hello, this is Hotep Ma'at Moet Talib coming to you once again. And once again, it is very early in the morning. The sun is not quite up yet, but it will be up soon. Um, I told my husband I was going to go back to bed and get some sleep so I could get some housework done. But I got hungry, so I ate, and then something popped upon my mind. And I was like, this won't take long at all. I just wanted to get it out. So that's what I'm going to do. Hopefully, it won't take long because sometimes I can go to talking and one thing can lead to another thing and that can lead to another idea or some other type of train of thought, and I'll just keep talking. But if I feel like it's important and I want to say it, then I'll say it. So, what I want to talk about basically is um, the state of my people today. You hear people say that black people are not conscious and that they are asleep. Those terms, um, for a person who is asleep or not conscious, those terms don't sound the same or mean the same that they do to a conscious black person. So, what I wanted to do is I want to break down what that means, and I also want to talk about going back to Africa. What I mean by going back to Africa, I'm not talking about getting on boats or planes, but that would be fine too. I would be totally okay with that. But people, when someone says, my black people are asleep and they need to wake up, I don't really think that this average sleeping black person knows what that means. So I'm going to try to break it down. If you don't know what it means, or if you do, this is just my interpretation of it. So basically, what a person is telling you, or what a person is saying when they say that black people are not conscious or asleep, yes, you are up physically walking around, living your life, so you think. But by you being unaware, or in even certain situations where I've seen that certain black people do know, like they find out what's going on, yet it seems as though they don't care or they don't put any effort into trying to do anything about it. And I've spoken to people like this, and I've asked them, with the information that whether it be, very little or a lot, with the information that how could you just like take the information in stride and not get upset about it, not be concerned, not want to dig deeper and pull out more information? Because I've seen people, black people, get certain types of information. Like I've talked to people about the Ma'afa 21, I believe it's called, Planned Parenthood and what it really stood for. And, I've seen other people show people proof of, bloodlines in the presidency and, the King Arthur plan, and especially with stuff that we just see on the news every day with our children getting shot down in the streets for no reason, and no one is being brought to justice. So just blatant stuff like that, I've seen this stuff presented to a black person, and they wouldn't deny it, or maybe they would probably say, you know you're jumping to conclusions, you're reading too much into this, slave shit. Or I've actually seen it presented to certain black people, and they would say, "Yeah, that makes sense. I understand and I believe you. I dig it. I don't think you a conspiracy theorist. I believe that's really what's going on." And then, excuse me, and then they shrug it off. That would be the last they would want to talk about it. Um, Personally, for me, and maybe this is just me trying being a pot trying to call the kettle black, but how I feel about it, and just because I feel a certain way about it doesn't mean that everybody else will. But I feel very passionately about this. How I feel about the situation is, if you were presented with information that was given to you and was proven. I don't want to say proven, but it was evidently linked to harming you, or just not going towards your well-being. Like if I came to you and if I knocked on your door, if I walked up to your house and knocked on your door, your front door, and said, "Hey, do you know that there's a guy all dressed in black trying to get in through your back window?" Would you just say, "Okay, thank you, close the door and have a nice day," and go back to watching TV? Or would you go to your back window and try to get this guy away from your house or call the police? That's exactly how I feel, and that's exactly what I think is going on when I tell people, black people, don't you know that they're poisoning and putting bad things in our water and our food? Don't you know that there's a plan in place to slowly exterminate, at the least control the black population? You know, and they've just kind of said, I've showed them, documentation, videos, and hearsay, whatever, just clues and opinions and stuff. And I've had people say, "Well, yeah, I believe it," and they'll leave it at that. Um, and I just find that amazing. I find that unbelievable. I find that incredible. I find that stupid, to say the least. It just floors me. So by someone saying that black people are asleep, I'll try to explain it um, like this. This is the best way I can put it. Have you ever been asleep and then somebody woke you up out of your sleep, for something simple like to ask you a question, or to tell you something, or to ask you, could I borrow some shoes, or can I borrow some sugar, or whatever? So you're in a deep, comfortable sleep, and we all know that sleeping feels great, of course, which is why I plan to go back right after this video. I hope I can get back to sleep. Sleeping feels awesome. People hardly ever like to be disturbed out of their sleep by alarm clocks, have to go to work, to school. Sleeping is very comfortable. So, have you ever been in a situation where someone kind of shook you out of your sleep and said, "Hey, can I borrow, $3? I'll give it back. I'm about to run out the door." Or they wake you up and say, "Hey, have you seen my phone? Have you seen my phone?" Or, "Hey, did you talk to Brittany?" Or whatever. And you're halfway asleep, and um, you're kind of like groggy, and you don't really know what's going on, and you don't really care. You know that this is somebody that you know, and they're asking you a question, and in your mind, you're like, "Man, I'm asleep." So you just kind of be like, "Yeah, it's over there. You can have it." Or, "Yeah, I saw it on the dresser, whatever." "No, I didn't talk to her." Kind of. So you are conscious, you're up and you're moving, and you know what's going on because you're answering the question, but you're kind of doing it in I just want to go back to sleep manner. That's exactly what is happening with our people walking around, going to work or not going to work, selling drugs, not selling drugs, being educated, not being educated. Being educated doesn't mean that you're conscious. You could be conscious and not be educated. Conscious just means you know what's going on. That has nothing to do with education. Education has to do with learning. You can learn all types of things and still be stupid. Um, so black people walking around this country, this planet, you're kind of in this half sleep mode. You're comfortable. Like I've talked to older black people, um, like an older generation, and they're older, have you? So they've seen the worst of the worst. My own mother, used to tell me a story. It's not a long, extravagant story or nothing, but she just basically told me about a situation where when she was uh, when she was a little girl, that's around the time they began the integration process with the schools, I believe. And she told me she remembers going to school with white children, and a white girl spit in her face. And she told me that she beat the little white girl up, which I don't doubt. My mom is a bad girl. But so I'm just saying that's something that she experienced, something that you or I probably has have had the privilege of not experiencing because we weren't alive in those times. And you can even take it further back. If my mother experienced a white girl spitting in her face across the school cafeteria table, who knows what my grandmother experienced. You know, I remember the story my grandmother did tell me. It wasn't nothing bad or graphic. She just told me that um, she remembers it was her and her mother, my great grandmother, and a few of her sisters, her siblings. They were walking down the street, and some random white man walked up to my great grandmother and wanted to buy my grandmother. I guess he thought she was sexy or something. But you know, it's just things that they experienced and the knowledge that they have and the views that they have that we don't, because things have changed um, politically on the surface, on the outside, but on the inside, the frame of mind, the thought processes, um, and just a lot of behind the scene things that are just that they are pushed behind the scenes. So I mean, yes, things have changed, but um, things are still the same. And let me try to explain this for the people who try to throw that in our faces. They talk about civil rights, and you know, when you're taught that you come from slavery, if you're shown constantly photographs and videos of your people, your nation of people constantly being beat down, whipped, hung, castrated, set on fire, and you're taught that this is your history. And then you take a look around and you see those same people that were under that type of treatment owning businesses. Hell yeah, you would say that that is a come up, especially when you're dealing with emotions. Those type of images, those graphic images, slavery, um, whips and chains, and KKK hoods, that will get a person emotional. And especially brown people. Brown people are just naturally emotional. That's just the way we're built. We love hard and we're very sympathetic. That's just how we are. That's why I was just telling my husband this a few days ago. Um, um, White people tend to critique or like to judge black people because we don't always speak the English language properly. You know, proper English. Well, let me just put that to rest right here because that's something that also ticks me off. First of all, my brown, black people, and even white people watching, hear me and hear me well. English. Okay, first of all, let me start with another nationality. Um, I'm not saying that if you try to speak another language that's not your first language, that there's no way in hell that you will be able to to speak it perfectly. That's not true. You could learn a second and a third language, and with practice, you could learn to speak those languages just as perfectly as you speak your native language. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, um, if you take a Spanish person who speaks Spanish and then you try to teach them English, especially at the very beginning, it's going to sound a little messed up because they don't know how to speak. It's not their people and it's not their language. And even I know Spanish people who've been speaking English for years. You know that this Spanish speaking Americans who live in America, they could speak Spanish and American, but they probably speak English. I'm sorry, not American. American is not a language. They probably speak English in public and they probably speak Spanish in their homes. They don't even say it, they don't speak Spanish correctly, but they're not judged because they know, oh, English is their second language. Well, the same applies whether you feel the same way or not. I'm here to tell you, I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but the same applies to black people. English is not our native and first language. We are Africans. And if you study the African tones and the words in the African language, um, we have a certain way of pronouncing our words. I mean, it's just different. The whole feel of our language is different. It's just something instilled in us, which is why we spoke the way that we did. Same goes for Asian people. They speak their certain language because they speak it well, don't they? All right. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we're not really built to speak English. That's white people's language. We have to speak it because we were stolen from our native land. we had our language beaten out of us, and we were taught this language. Okay, so it goes back to our ancestry. They were taught this language, and as I just demonstrated, speaking about a Spanish person, when you're taught another language in the beginning, it's going to be messed up. So you're taught this language in slavery. I'm putting you in place of the slave. You're a woman or a man, and you're being stripped of your African tongue, and you're being taught English, and your children are being taught English. So it's going to sound a little messed up when you're trying to, get rid of African, which is not a language, but whatever language you were speaking in Africa, to speak English. You're not going to speak it correctly. So what you're doing is you're passing on this incorrect way of speaking this foreign language down to your children, and it gets passed down. So I really think is, white people, especially in my opinion, like to look down their noses at black people who speak slang or improper English as if they were ignorant or something. When in reality, I think that it's ignorant of you to judge someone that is not of your race and does not, does not have your language as their first language, and you're judging them because they don't speak it correctly. That's like a Spanish person being upset at a white person trying to speak Spanish and not saying the words correctly. That is done to us. English is not our first native language, okay? It is an African language. That's what my ancestors spoke before they were stripped of it and taught your language. So, no, I may not know how to say your words correctly, and quite frankly, I have no desire or interest in saying your words correctly. I'm going to speak like me. Whatever little remnant is left of me as an African person, let me have that, okay? And I don't even want to hear you talk about getting into schools and all that, because you know and I know, if you want to be an honest and intelligent person, that it was intentionally done, that black people did not get the best education and still are not getting the best education. So don't blame me or my people, blame your damn self.